Senator, the Tower Commission suggests that the situation was one of a president acting casually, out of touch. Doesn't that disturb you? Is this person really able to be on top of things for 2 more years?
Oh, no doubt about it. The president's certainly going to be on top of things. I think the president does have a different approach than some of us might have. Some of us may be too concerned about details. Maybe the president isn't concerned enough. He's more of a conceptual leader.
How much did the president damage himself by saying he just didn't recall? What's worse, the Tower Commission's conclusion or the president himself saying, well, I just couldn't remember?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, I think I think people have to make a judgment on the fact that the president could not recall certain details. But I would just say this: I think the president. I mean, he appointed this group, and the report is out. It does not implicate the president in any way, except it does indicate blunders were made of colossal proportions. And the president apparently didn't adopt a hands-on approach to what was happening in the NSC. It was sort of independent operation within the White House, which you can't tolerate. From that standpoint, I think the American public will want additional answers. And I would hope when the president reports to the nation next week that we'll have those answers. And at that time, he should demonstrate that he is fully in control and intends to you know, dig into some of these details himself.
The Tower Commission report ratifies what the polls have shown that most Americans have believed all along, namely that many mistakes were made and that the President of the United States made quite a number of them. Specifically, the Commission highlighted 4 major mistakes. First, they found that the Iran policy, which they characterized as an arms for hostage deal, was bad policy, and that it was the president's policy. All along I thought that was really at the heart of the issue, that all the rest of these things about dates and so on were really subplots to that basic decision that was made to sell arms to Iran, and it was arms for hostages. Swapping arms for hostages made a shambles of this country's anti-terrorism policy. It undercut and horribly damaged our relations with our allies and possibly even prolonged and increased the number of deaths in the Iran-Iraq war. If the latter happened, then all the rationalizations or excuses in the world cannot wash that blood from our hands. The second mistake highlighted by the Tower report was one of mismanagement. The president simply did not monitor or keep on top of what was being done in his name by his subordinates. He had brought this operation into the White House and then did not monitor it properly. Third, there were failures on the part of most of the president's men. Chief of Staff, NSC advisor, the CIA director, the Secretaries of State and Defense, and of course Colonel North, all were found to have failed in their duties to inform the president about what was being done as well as what the implications of his policy were. But here again, the president cannot evade responsibility for their failures. If they had an obligation to give him some answers, he had an obligation to ask some questions. Fourth and finally, the Tower Commission criticized what they described as the administration's obsession with secrecy. That obsession is probably the easiest part of the whole affair to understand. The president and his advisors knew that the American people would not stand for a policy of sending guns to the Ayatollah, especially as ransom for American hostages, so they tried to do it covertly. But there's one thing we should have learned by now, it's that no covert policy can long endure if it does not have the support of the American people. In sum, the Tower Commission has delivered a stinging indictment of administration policy, of people and process, starting with the president himself. It will be for the congressional committees and the special prosecutor to determine if laws were broken, either with regard to the Iran arms sales or the diversion of money to the Contras. For now, it's clear that President Reagan instituted a bad policy. That bad policy was carried out. In the future, if the president is to prevent future horror stories like this, he must carry out the reforms necessary to keep this from happening again. He must cease his incredible detachment from the most important job in the world.